welcome back to the Rise and Align podcast, where we talk about all things high vibrational. We are your hosts. My name is Haley.
And my name is Demi, and today we are talking about polarity or duality or the Yin Yang concept. And the Law of Polarity states that there is and must be an equal and opposite end to absolutely everything in our physical reality in order for it to exist within the physical reality. And it also states that it is necessary for balance within our universe. So we just kind of wanted to talk about how we do need both, and how if God creates all that is, that means that God creates both opposite aspects of absolutely everything. And there is a different perspective to absolutely everything, which is just so much fun to explore and to learn how to balance those within ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And, it is a universal law. So it's a really important concept, I think, for us to discuss. And it can be used to your advantage. When you're familiar with the universal laws, you are able to manipulate energy or use these concepts to create the life of your dreams. You can use it to manifest. You can use it in a more everyday aspect in your life as well. Once you start to learn these and apply them to your life, that can be very beneficial. I like to think of the law of polarity as two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. The opposite always exists. There is no way one could exist without the other. And if you really think about that, there is truly an opposite to everything. And obviously some common ones, light and dark, sun and moon, yes and no. There's always an opposite to everything. And when you really grasp that, and you find yourself in these darker moments or these more shadow moments, know that there is always an opposite to that in maybe the more lighter aspect that you can tap into, because if you can access one, you can always access the other.
Absolutely. And as we always talk about, how you feel within always reflects in your external world. So when you learn how to balance those energies within you, then you start to see your entire life becomes really balanced. And that just feels wonderful. And I want to share this exercise that I learned through Bob Proctor. He said that because there are multiple and opposite perspectives to everything, that also works with our thoughts and beliefs. So if you catch yourself believing something that is negative, like say that you're worried that you're not going to get the job that you want, you'll write that. You'll write down all of the emotions that you have about it. Like, I'm not good enough for this job, and I'm so fearful that I won't get it, and that someone else is better than me, or whatever, right? And then you write the opposite to that. I am so sure that I am more than worthy of this job, and I am convinced that I will absolutely get it because I am the best possible person for this position. And you can use that with absolutely anything in your life, whether it's you're feeling badly about yourself or a relationship or a job or literally anything. There's an opposite perspective to everything. And when you use that concept, you want to rip apart or burn the first one that's not serving you and not helping you to manifest what you want. And then you want to embody the emotions that you mention in the second one in the opposite perspective. And when you start to do that, then you create that in your life. It is so useful and yet so logical.
Yeah, it's like when you're doing that, you're also using the law of attraction, because when you're allowing yourself to tap into that opposite perspective and you begin to feel what that's like, then you will attract that into your reality.
Absolutely. Most people who get into spirituality and, start to work on self-development, I think they often hold a perspective that they need to be healed, or they need to be good enough, or they need to be different, or they need to be only positive all the time. And it can become like toxic positivity. And in order for anyone to exist, we must have that balance within us. So I think that these concepts have helped me personally so much in accepting the dark and light within me, and rather than judging or shaming myself, to embody that and, use that to my benefit rather. And it's true unconditional love when you accept both sides, the shadow and the light.
Yeah, and I feel like the darkness, it does have a value and purpose just as the light does, shadows can be beautiful. That shadow aspect, if you're thinking about like sadness, pain, grief, first of all, that's evidence of a well-lived life. Like you're really getting to experience this broad spectrum of emotions, and you get to really, even though it's hard, you get to experience all of these things. And not only that, but it gives you the potential for the opposite, and kind of teaches you what you do and don't like, and teaches you how to utilize that to get more of what you do like out of life. I feel like, when you are going through contrast, which I feel like contrast can be a version of duality, like it's kind of how it would show up in your life, or a way that we would refer to it. Like when you're experiencing contrast in your life and it might feel more negative, in the end, it is really helping you to value and appreciate when things are good. And it's also things that you might take for granted otherwise. I like to think of it when I'm really sick and like I can't breathe through my nose, and you kind of take that for granted, like just being able to breathe through your nose on a daily basis. But if I haven't been sick, I wouldn't have been reminded of like how good it feels to breathe in through your nose and be able to sleep at night. I just feel like going through little things like that remind you to be grateful for the things that feel good to you, or remind you to find gratitude for those things.
I absolutely agree with that. It does remind you to be grateful. And they say that you cannot grieve if you haven't loved, and that grief is an evidence of deep love. And I believe that because there must be balance, if you experience great heartbreak, it means that you have the capacity to experience great love. And I think that there is such thing as like emotional capacity, where sometimes if people have been through more in their life, like more traumatic events, a lot of times just age and life will give you that kind of wisdom and ability to deeply feel, and to feel deeper and deeper. Actually, some people will cut off their emotions, right, for a time, but also some people realize that the love is worth the heartbreak, and that that's kind of the point of physical reality, is to be able to feel and to experience these sensations that I'm not sure that we get to experience in non-physical. It's such a blessing to feel, and emotion is vibration, it's energy in motion, and it's such a blessing. And I do genuinely believe that it is worth it. Like, love is the highest vibration. I'm always saying that. I genuinely believe that. And I think in loving and opening yourself to another person and like taking them as part of you, you always risk that heartbreak. But so do we in life and death. And you realize that I believe life was most likely inevitable. I don't know that we could have avoided it. We're here. And death is also inevitable, and so it's like you get to make that choice, whether you're going to live and you're going to take advantage of being in physical and feeling as much as you possibly can, because it's a beautiful blessing, or, you kind of stop yourself from living while you're still alive if you don't.
Yeah. It's like living your fullest despite what could happen, like the potential for loss, or the potential for heartbreak, or the potential for whatever. You do it anyways.
I think that really truly comes from these other polar opposites, which are faith and fear, and living from a place of faith, knowing that, anything could happen, anything is possible, and death is inevitable, but you still live from that place of faith and love. And, I like to try, when I'm feeling like badly about something in my life, to look at it from like God perspective, which I genuinely think is an unconditionally loving perspective. And when you do that, it kind of takes away a lot of the fear and a lot of the judgment and shame, and allows you to see that all of you is beautiful and it's all meant to be. And I think a lot of times, I think all people probably have struggled with some sort of insecurity, right? And no one is quote unquote perfect, but we are all perfectly ourselves, and we are all perfectly different. And like, that's actually our superpower, you know?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it all depends on perspective, whether you think that your difference is a beauty or you think it's a shame.
Yeah, I think it truly is a choice. Like, you get to choose the perspective that you want to experience. And maybe a lot of people don't realize that, but you do get to, it is a choice of how you see the world and which end of the spectrum you get to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did do an episode on masculine and feminine. That's hugely like yin and yang energy as well. And I've been kind of writing about like the different dual ends, I suppose, the different polar ends of a lot of different things. And I think we could talk forever about them. But I also wrote polarity, duality, and yin yang because they're all like really the same concept kind of. So polarity is having opposite poles or opposite contradictory tendencies or opinions or perspectives. And duality means being dual, opposition, contrast between two concepts or two aspects, which I have to say too, like some of my closest friends have really taught me unconditional love. And it sounds silly, but I'm like, I think that with men a lot, I had a tendency to pick out what I didn't want, what I didn't like, and not accept them because of their like quote unquote flaws, right? But then with close friends, I'll see them do the same thing that these men are doing, and I'm like, I love you anyway. Like, you have a different perspective than me about this or that, and maybe the same perspective as me on something else, but I still love you and accept you regardless of your opinion or perspective on, you know, different things, because you are different. Like, everyone is different. No one's going to agree with you on everything, and that doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them imperfect.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make them unlovable either. You can love people and still have those, you know, polar perspectives.
Yeah.
Which I think is such a beautiful thing.
And what's interesting is like those two opposing things bring balance. Like, you need the two to have balance. So if you think about that in like a relationship aspect, like your masculine and feminine obviously is something we've talked about, but to have those two ends meet in the middle creates that balance. So having some of that duality in a relationship, I think, creates balance instead of it all being on one end of a spectrum, and then it would be off balance.
I completely agree. I think it not only creates balance, but creates magnetism too, you know, and I think it's so obvious between men and women because like women are definitely more emotional, you know, I mean, it shows on a physical level as well, like with our hormones and stuff, like we are, it just is what it is. And we also create life, right? But then men are sometimes more logical and more mathematically minded, you know, and I think that you need both in a relationship. Like, and I think that we can help each other and like open each other's perspectives more. And like women can be so much more gentle and like mothering, right? And then men can also be like protective. They can be more violent, but it's like you kind of want them to be if it comes down to like a situation where you need that protection.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it, you know, but you need that. So even though you're different than me, like we can help each other, you know, I can help show you the gentle side of life and you know, tap into your emotions, and like you can help me, I don't know, do yard work. No.
And at the most foundational level of like where we look at human society, men were hunters and women were the gatherers, because, you know, a lot of women don't want to go out and kill the animal and get it ready, prepare it, but they want to pick berries and frolic in the forest, but they're still like doing their part, but it's a different aspect. Like even at that most foundational level, that balance is there.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think it's interesting in like dating world today and like a lot of what we see on the internet and stuff, because I think so many women talk about wanting to go back to that, where men are like protecting and providing and women are childbearing and, you know, like cooking and cleaning and doing at-home tasks at their leisure. Because, you know, if you check out our feminine masculine episode, you'll see, you know, kind of why that makes sense on a physical level and energetic level. But a lot of men who were raised more in their feminine and not so much in their healed masculine, think that that means that it's an uneven balance, that men are the ones giving all and that women are just taking. But that's not it at all. It's definitely an even balance. It's definitely giving to each other and helping each other and loving each other deeply and unconditionally, not for the purpose of I'll love you if you give me this, or you'll love me if I give you this. It's more just I love you, so I am always giving to you, and I'm always, doing everything I can to show that to you. And I think that's really important. I also wrote Yin Yang. It says opposite interconnected forces, which when you mentioned a coin, it is one thing, just like Earth is one whole thing, but there's got to be this balance within it, and it's interconnected as well. And we all have that masculine and feminine within us, and it's so important to learn how to balance that, because if you're off kilter, if you're way more in one than the other, it can create so much contrast in your life, especially if it's like unnatural for you to be in, like, say, women who are in their masculine. It can create so much contrast within your life and isolate you and make you have to act from both a masculine and feminine place. And it's like you're doing two roles at once, and that can be just so extremely stressful. Whereas when you kind of balance those, then you can attract that opposite energy into your life and not have to play both roles. And then I found it really interesting when I was looking at yin and yang, like the definition of it. It said, and this is true on a scientific level as well, the universe creates itself out of a primary chaos of material energy, organized into the cycles of yin and yang, formed into objects and lives. And like that can be simple, or it can be so deep, because it goes down to like atoms and like electrons and protons, and it also goes to such a massive scale, and it also is like good and bad, and life and death, and light and dark, up and down, love and hate, feminine, masculine.
Just a different way to say the law of polarity, basically.
Yep.
It is law.
Yeah. And it's within absolutely everything. I think that the balance between spiritual and physical reality is one of the most important that you could have balanced within you, because it's fascinating. I think that in order to have that, you must be present in your physical reality. And it's like that grounding of the physical, but also grounding in the spiritual, knowing that you are safe and that you are connected to all that is while being in this physical.
Yeah. I feel like some ways that people practice spirituality is like the more meditation, the better. And like meditate, which I think meditation is so amazing and has a purpose, but it also takes you out of the physical aspect of life, and you're not grounded. You're just so embodied in the spiritual aspect that you're not in the physical. Whereas I think that, there is such thing as too much meditation. Like you have to actually do things that allow you to embody more of that grounding earth energy in order for it to be more successful. You will expand more if you are able to embody both of those.
I agree. And I think that I've come to, and who knows, like no one really knows, right? But I've come to this concept that I believe that we are created perfectly imperfect, and we're meant to embody who this person that you are, feel that you are fully. And of course you want to expand, in a positive direction. You want that soul growth, but you also don't want to do it by like shaming yourself and saying like you're not good enough and so you need to change, or you're unhealed, you're broken, so you need to heal. It's more so you're so perfect, and I'm going to just love the positive aspects so much that those keep growing within your life, and accept the perceived flaws within you as well. If we were all trying to be perfect, I think we'd all be miserable. I don't think that we're meant to like change who we are. I think we're meant to embody who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is where the magic lies. And we're all different for a reason. We all have something different to offer. And so, yeah, I think self-acceptance is really important for sure.
As we get older too, like it automatically comes a bit for us, like because we want to learn who we are and what we like, and we just want to feel better really at the end of the day. And I think that that feeling better comes in learning who you authentically are and learning to embody that and act out of that, and then that creates the most authentic version of your life. And so in doing that, you become like happier, you know. And even though of course contrast happens, and of course you're not perfect and no one around you is, it is actually it all is, you know. And it makes it easier to go through that contrast when your life is that way, you know. When you create a life that resonates with you, it comes from a place of self-acceptance, you know. And if you realize one day, like, my passion is building air balloons, and you follow that, then you end up attracting, you know, a wonderful job that you love into your life. You don't feel stressed out going to work. You attract people who you like, who have similar interests, and, you know, who care about you and your well-being. And all of a sudden, like, your entire life reflects that authentic version of yourself. And if you're loving that version of yourself, then you're attracting love from others. And I think that in doing that, it allows you to see others in that same unconditional light, where you're not like judging others and thinking like, oh, well, that person, you know, doesn't make as much money, so they're not as good, or that person, you know, smokes vape, so they're a bad person and I hate them, like, or I can't be around them or something. You're just thinking like, oh, that person is amazing. Like, they're passionate about what they do, and, you know, they're fun and they're friendly and they're a good person. And that's what I'm going to focus on. And that it just brings so much love into every aspect of your life in doing that.
Going back to the concept of like duality, you can always choose what you get to see from those people. Like, you can choose to go down more of the lack or judgment mindset, or you can choose to go down more of that like abundance, unconditional loving aspect. Like, you get to choose how you see that person, because both exist within the person. It exists in all of us. We can see the opposite ends in everyone. And it's always a choice. Like, you get to choose where you put your focus.
Absolutely. And I think some people, like, I've talked about this, right, with people throughout life. And some people will say, well, like, what about criminals? Like, what about people who murder other people? Like, is there good within them? And of course, you know, it can be argued, whatever, and there's a different perspective to everything. But I think that when you're coming from that unconditional perspective, you can often see like, well, I might understand how their subconscious was developed in like such a sick way that they're just so sad of a person, you know. And that doesn't make anything okay, but it allows you to see a different perspective. It allows you to not be full of hate, but be full of love, even though it's not like love for that person. It's like, I understand and accept all that is, you know?
Yeah.
I think it frees you of holding on to the heavy weight of hate.
Yeah. And this is also going to kind of play off something that you had said last week, which I don't remember the exact terms that you used, but even the concept of God and the devil, like, especially in organized religion, you're trained to fear the devil and think the most absolute worst things, the worst case scenario. And God is unconditional love, all knowing. And even God can look at the devil and have seen love for the devil, you know, like Lucifer, he was an angel,
a fallen angel, that God created.
Yeah. So I just think like, even in that, like, God can see the good in the worst.
Yeah. And I mean, that is truly unconditional love. And I mean, I know some people are going to hear that and be like, what? But God does create all that is. And that doesn't mean that you want evil or darkness, but actually in focusing on the good things within a quote unquote bad person, or the love within something awful, you're actually expanding that vibration. You're spreading more love, because when you hold on to hate and judgment and shame and like these really bad emotions, you're actually spreading that. And it's funny because in physical, like, humans tend to do like the opposite, because it's nature, it's human nature for some reason, that we want to like focus on that's bad, and so I want to change that rather than focusing on what is good. And I've noticed this psychologically within people, like my child and other relationships. If you are always picking at someone and being like, you shouldn't do that, you're bad, don't do that, it doesn't help. It actually makes them feel worse about it. Like, especially if it's a bad habit or something, they won't change it. But if you're like, this is what you do good, like and you're giving them more positive feedback rather than like screaming at them or punishing them or shaming them, they're actually so much more, it's so much more effective to give them that positive feedback. And they're so much more productive when you are giving them that positive feedback rather than giving them negative feedback. It's so much more effective. And it's the same with yourself. When you're shaming yourself about something like, oh, I'm gaining so much weight and I'm so mad at myself, rather than I love feeling healthy and energetic, and I love feeling, strong and thin, or whatever you want to be. It's much more inspiring to look at the benefit rather than the shaming side of it. And that works within relationships so much. And yesterday it was funny. I complimented a girl in a drive-through, and I do that a lot. I intentionally give compliments to like everyone. And it was part of a lesson that I learned being a consultant through Proctor Gallagher. And it was basically giving what you want to get back from the universe. And it's not doing it for the purpose, but it's just spreading that love vibration, because there is no bad from that. Like, it's good, right? And so I'm always saying like, oh, I love this or I love that. Like, oh, you're pretty. What? Yeah, I tell people, and it's genuine. I'm not saying it out of genuineness at all. I genuinely mean what I'm saying to them, and they feel that. And my son said, do you always compliment people so that you get things cheaper? And I'm like, no, people don't give you things cheaper because you compliment them. But I just do it because I like to spread joy. And you never know when someone is having a bad day or, not feeling so great. And I myself have had people say nice things to me on days like that, and it can change your day around, And I do genuinely believe that even though there is this yin and yang, you can choose that positive perspective. You can choose faith and love. You can choose to act and live in that. And it does create more of that within your life.
Another example of that for me is like, you're driving somewhere, you're in a hurry, and maybe there's someone super slow in front of you, or they're swerving, whatever. You're getting all mad. You're like, I have to be here this time. And like, you can start to freak out, and you can get mad and want to like lay on your horn, whatever. You can do that. Or you could think about, maybe that person is having the worst day of their life. Maybe they just lost someone and they're driving to their funeral or something. Like, you never know like what that person is going through. So instead of freaking out and making their day 10 times worse, just have patience and allow it to unfold how it's meant to, because also everything happens in divine time. But you can choose how you're going to react in a situation. And, sometimes I'm driving and I'm having a bad day, and someone's like pulling up super close to me, and I'm like, leave me alone. Like, and so I can see myself in both situations, and like how I would want someone to react to me in that situation, and how I should react to them in that situation. Like, you should always choose that kindness, that patience, the acceptance, the love, whatever it is. Like, you can always choose that.
You can always choose that. And I believe in, intentionally living a life of alignment and doing things that are going to keep you like calm and level-headed and feeling good. It's easier to make that decision. And it's easier to, when you do encounter contrast in your life, respond instead of react. Because reaction usually, it's so automatic and quickly, and it often comes from negative emotion. Whereas when you're like living from a place of love and serenity, then you're acting out of that. And so even if somebody does something that might trigger you or frustrate you or whatever, you can respond. And like in driving, sometimes people get crazy and they're acting out of anger and frustration, and then they get in an accident. And it's like, if you would have just stayed calm, like you probably could have passed them in 2 minutes, or, maybe you do pass them, and then down the road something bad happens. Like maybe the reason that they're slowing you down is for your own good. Like when you live from that place of faith, you trust the universe and everything does happen in divine time. And I can tell you, like owning my own business, I'm very timely and I want to be on time and I respect people's time, and I'm usually going to somebody's wedding, so it's really important to be there on time. And sometimes things will happen where I get stuck in traffic or something like that. And I might feel stressed for a second, but then I literally say to myself, in divine time, in divine time. And they end up texting me like, oh, hey, I'm running 15 minutes late. Every single time that I've ever been late for something, or if I'm coaching and I feel like I am just maybe not in the right mind space to do a call, I'm like secretly kind of hoping that maybe we can reschedule. They will text me and be like, hey, I need to reschedule every single time. Like everything does happen in divine time. And the more that you recognize that and live from that place of faith and calm, the more that you will see it reflected in your life. But I swear, every time I'm late for something, so is the other person. It is always in divine time.
Yeah, always. And I feel like being intentional with how you want to show up in the world is super important. And we've talked about so many practices and ways that we do that and how to live out of alignment, which is similar. But using that as a way to like choose how you want to show up in the world, like set an intention for your day. And a lot of things that I do are more witchy focused, like stirring an intention in my coffee or having that intention in my mind's eye while I'm doing yoga. There's so many ways, but using that to help carry that intention throughout the day, whether it be like just spreading kindness. And then over time, you're kind of also training yourself to have that be your automatic response to things as opposed to reacting in a more negative manner.
I also think that like balance and moderation are so key in physical life. I'm looking at a lot of these things that I wrote down, right? Now, one of them is summer and winter. And we've done some different episodes on spring and summer, and I'm sure we'll do one on fall. And we've talked too about how the contrast between those seasons makes you appreciate them more. Like in the summer, I'm not thinking I wish it was winter or fall. I'm thinking I love it when it's sunny and warm and green and abundant and alive. And in the fall, I'm thinking I love it when it's cozy and cool and colorful and beautiful. And, we're having bonfires and doing fall things and drinking hot drinks. And in the wintertime, I'm thinking it is beautiful that these infinite sparkles are falling from the sky and that the ice is creating these beautiful natural sculptures. And, I'm thinking it's nice to be living slowly and to be able to sit in the house and clean and get work done and not feel guilty that I'm missing the beautiful weather outside because it's too cold to go out there, and there's something beautiful about the contrast in everything. And, I wrote good and bad and future and past. And I think the perfect balance to that is the present. And I think the perfect balance to that is embodying both. And, sometimes I have a glass of alcohol and other times I'm drinking health supplements, but it's balance and it's allowing and embodying both without that judgment. And of course, like appreciating what is good for you and what is now while it is now, because we all know that it's going by quite quickly.
Yeah. I think that is one of my favorite things to like embody the seasons of life, or to live by the wheel of the years, to really embody that season, do all the things that encompass that season and enjoy it while it's there. Like with winter coming, like I do have some anxiety around that. Like I have a little bit of like, I don't want it to happen, but I know that it always serves its purpose and it is a great time to slow down. So it's really fun to allow yourself to like relax into the winter, to slow down and to drink all your cozy drinks and eat your nourishing warm meals that you don't want to eat in the summer, and go do all the winter activities that you can't do, and have like enjoy, if you celebrate the holidays like Christmas, like have that cozy Christmas, like do all the things, put up lights, make little crafts, like embody that to its fullest. But also, especially in the winter for me, I can find myself experiencing some of that contrast, or I can start to feel my focus shift a little bit more to that negative space, because here it really is intense. Our winters are so long, and you can kind of start to maybe go to that more dark place, like, oh, I can't do this anymore. But if you do, that's okay too, because balance, like, we're not going to be happy all the time. But when spring finally comes, that anticipation and that excitement, once it finally comes, is like so blissful, because you get to appreciate all those things that you had maybe missed during the winter. And this last winter really taught me that, because for whatever reason it felt really heavy for me. And when we reached spring, like, I had never felt more blissful in my entire life. It was all encompassing. It was so beautiful and lovely. And it also taught me to really fully take in each and every season, because that it does have its purpose too. And it does teach you to appreciate all that is. Like, it really does.
Yeah, really, truly all that is. And I think appreciating what is such a huge key. And it's funny, because as you were saying that, and you were like, it was kind of a hard winter, and that's okay. I was actually looking at good and bad as these two polar ends, right? Or happy and sad as these two polar ends. And I thought, right before you said that, I thought to myself, sometimes it kind of, in a way, feels good to feel sad. And that sounds kind of crazy, but it's because it allows you to then feel happy. If you just felt like one solid emotion all the time, you wouldn't appreciate it. If it were happy all the time, you wouldn't appreciate it as much. You wouldn't be able to reach higher levels of joy, because you don't know the difference. There isn't a difference, right? Like Russ made that song, it's just waves. And like, that's how life is, and that's how it must be. And I kind of see it in the way like the stock market usually is, which is up and down, but it's usually overall going in an upward trend, but it has to be down to go up, and it's the same with life. Like, you have to feel the contrast in order to fully feel. And like, I think of listening to sad songs, it can sometimes be therapeutic. Like, it sometimes feels good to just cry your eyes out to your favorite song and like sing your favorite sad song, because it's allowing you to not only fully embody that vibration, but also to release it, and also to prepare for the upward
and death and rebirth, like letting those things die, which to let them die, you have to release them. You have to be able to work through them to release them. And as a Scorpio, I love transmutation and diving into the shadows. Like, there can't be light without the darkness. Like, you have to be willing to accept it all and be a part of it all. We were talking about toxic positivity. If you are in that space, like, it feels good for a while. It feels really good, but there's a reason it's called toxic positivity, because there can be too much. There's such thing as too much, and you don't have that balance in your life to sustain it anyways.
You're not even allowing yourself to be human. And you have to. You can't stay on one polar end. It's not possible. And it actually ends up stressing you out so badly that then the opposite comes full on.
Yeah, because like, I said this about something else, but the way it's like, the waves aren't like flooding the shores. It's not like a hurricane. When you're finding balance, like, the waves are just like nicely crashing on the shore, instead of like in tsunami
so you're
level,
building
like
up a wall, and then all of a sudden your wall breaks.
Yes.
you know, and that's what happens when you are too focused on one aspect, one perspective.
Yeah. And I feel like I've talked about this in an episode as well, but astrologically speaking, the stars also find balance with the polar opposites every single month. So there's the sun sign, and then the full moon is always the opposing energy. The stars, the sky, the cosmos also find balance with opposing energies. It's not just Earth. It extends it. That's why it's a universal law, so I think that that's really important too. And again, like, the astrological signs teach us to find balance, because it teaches us how to embody all of these different energies. And when the sun is in one energy and the full moon is in the opposing energy, full moons are representing release or letting go. So that opposing energy is usually, it's bringing up the shadow aspects, and the full moon is about releasing those things. So the sun, you're embodying the good aspects of that sign. And then the full moon, you're releasing the more shadow aspects of the opposing sign. It's another way to teach you balance in life.
It's within everything, like to the smallest and infinite biggest things that we can even imagine, you know? And I love that. It's a law. I was writing down, right, these different polar things. And I realized when I was writing them that I had a perspective on all of them. In my mind, one of them was good and one of them was bad. And I was like, this is really interesting. And then there were a couple that I came across, because after I started noticing that I was doing it, there were a couple I came across and I was like, which one do I think is bad? Which one do I think is good? And why do I think that? You know, and I think that those things come based on like what you're taught growing up and the societal like perspectives on things.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is like the universe doesn't look at things as good or bad. It's just a vibration. They're just opposite vibrations. It's not like the universe prefers one over the other. You just have to have both.
You have to have both. Yeah. So I thought it was funny, you know, like human perspectives. And that also, you're talking about the sun and the moon. So the moon is meant to represent subconscious and the sun to represent conscious. And I think that I see the subconscious as being more of a spiritual and the conscious as being more of a logical, you know, it literally aligns with every aspect of life.
Yeah. So embrace it, welcome it, accept it, you know, and don't judge yourself for the shadows, the bad, because there's no such thing as the bad. It's just opposing energies.
And I think a lot of the times, like what we even perceive is the bad is just something that we learned from someone else. It's not necessarily bad. It's just like what your mom taught you was bad, you know?
Yeah. And when something bad happens, you can use it to be like something that's equally the opposite is about to happen, like something bad, but this means something just as good is going to happen next. Like that's a potential. Because you experienced one, you can just assume that the opposite is coming, and it will, because you believe that it will.
Yes. I use that all the time, and I do believe that more than anything. Anytime that anything like negative happens to me, I'm always like, I'm so excited something's good's coming, you know? And people are like, what? Like your car just broke. And I'm like, yeah, it's going to be good.
Can't wait.
And then I also use it as like a moment to be like, you know what? I'm grateful that it's going to work out and that I can fix whatever this problem is and that life is going to continue, you know? And then I'm even more grateful for the moments where everything is all good.
Absolutely.
Yep. It allows you to really fully embody that. Whereas I think when you are imbalanced, you're often not appreciating when things are good or allowing yourself to feel when things are bad. Blocking emotion, which is holding you back from feeling deeply, which is a shame because that's the whole point.
Yeah. Yes. So we are going to finish this episode by pulling a tarot card for you guys, as always, to see what the universe has to say about this topic. And we've pulled from this deck before. It is the Steampunk Tarot. So if you guys are on Spotify or YouTube, this is one of the cards that came out. It's perfect, as always.
So on this card, it literally has a yin and yang and a man and a woman. And same with, I'm going to read out of this tarot book by Nikki J, Cards for Divination, Wisdom, and Self-Discovery. There's also a man and woman on here if you can see the video right now. The 2 cups represent finding an equal partner, the other half of what you have been missing in your life. You can see the 2 figures presenting their cups to one another at an equal level, showing that they are sharing their feelings and forming a bond. It is thought of as the minor arcana version of the Lovers, and as such, it shows the importance of balanced relationships. This is perfect. Upright, when drawn in a love reading, the 2 of Cups shows potential of new love of some kind, or a marriage. It is the alchemical energy of 2 people merging in an equal way, a balance of power. In a career reading, it can show potential partnerships that will be mutually beneficial, or at least a collaboration of some kind. It is important to have your own cup filled so that you can come to any situation feeling full of love and confidence. The reverse meaning, which we pulled it up right, is if the 2 cups is reversed, then the balance in the relationship may be fractured. You may be giving far more than you're receiving at this time. It can also signify that you have lost your identity as an individual. Remember that you are individuals and you need to stand up in your own right. This could not be more perfect. I think it shows so many good points that we kind of talked about. One, that even though they are both presenting their full cups and their equal cups, that they're very different energies and that can help each other in different ways. And I think that the reverse version is showing you how important it is to embody who you authentically are. And I think a lot of times in relationships, whether they be platonic or romantic, people will take on the traits of other people and they will become more and more like them. And sometimes they will lose themselves in that if they do not love and accept themselves enough as they are. And it will take away the magnetism from within the relationship. So it's so important to fill your cup first. That's why they say you have to love yourself first before you can love someone else. Mm-hmm. Because I think that comes from, you have to be unconditionally accepting and loving of who you truly are in order to be unconditionally loving and accepting of someone else. And you have to embody love in order to attract love. And, when you have that imbalance, it shows up in the relationships within your life as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we go into even more detail on that in our love episode, our unconditional love episode. So please listen to that if that is something that you're wanting to hear more about, because so important. With that, we will finish up today's episode. Thank you as always for joining us and for raising the frequency with us. We appreciate and love each and every one of you, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye.